Let's start right here in the old design in step 1. So in order to spin an article with Spin Rewriter, you have to go through 3 steps. In step 1, you enter your article. This is this big input field right here. And you pick a couple of settings. Then in step 2, you've got your article and you click on individual words and phrases to select the synonyms you want to use. Or you can use one-click rewrite, so Spin Rewriter does all of the work for you and picks all of the synonyms for you. And then in step 3, you've got your finalized article, and you can use it to generate unique versions of your article, or you can export hundreds of unique versions and so on. So let's take a look at step 1 in the old design. We've got a couple of additional options here. We can fetch a new article from a database of articles, so we've got an article to work with, which is great. And then we've got the information about how many words our article has. And if we enter an article or just a simple sentence in this case, we can see that the text has 16 words. And we can also fix the grammar here. And then if we go a bit lower on the page, we'll see that we have 2 sets of settings, of options. The first set of options lets us tell Spin Rewriter if we want it to work on the structure of our sentences and paragraphs, or if we want Spin Rewriter to write additional paragraphs on its own, because this is what Spin Rewriter can do before we get into step 2. And then we've also got the one-click rewrite settings, which tell Spin Rewriter what to do with individual words and phrases. This is how we tell Spin Rewriter if we want to use as many synonyms as possible for every single word, or if we only want to use the synonyms that are definitely correct and that Spin Rewriter is very confident about. So we've got 2 different sets of settings, and then in order to move to step 2, we have 2 buttons, and one says Start Rewriting and one says One-Click Rewrite, and it's not immediately apparent for new users what these 2 buttons will do and which one is more important. And the thing is, the Start Rewriting button takes us to step 2, where we can start rewriting our article. But the One-Click Rewrite button here takes the user to step 2 and then does all of the work for them immediately, picks all of the synonyms, and then it takes the user to step 3, where their article is finalized. So for new users, this is kind of confusing because they have 2 ways of moving forward in the process. So now with all of this in mind, let's take a look at step 1 in the new design. So this is now step 1 of the new Spin Rewriter version 10 design, and you'll immediately see just how much cleaner it is. Now I was talking about the 3 steps before, but in the old design, we actually never told the user there were going to be 3 steps. They just knew they were in step 1, but they didn't know if there were going to be 3 steps or 11 steps. But in the new design, you immediately see you're now in step 1, and then you've got a step 2, and then you've got a step 3. So the new users know exactly where in the process they are, and that's a great feeling. And then we've still got the big input field as before, which is where you enter your article, and we've still got the option to fetch a new article. But we're not showing the number of words, and we're not showing the option to fix grammar because there's no text to work with just yet. And only when the user enters an article, this is when we show the number of words and the fix grammar option. And not just that, like remember how before we said your text contains approximately 16 words? There's nothing too approximate about it, is there? Like counting words is a pretty exact science. So now we just tell the user, okay, you've got 16 words to work with. So now let's go back to the old design. We had settings in 2 different places. So we had the options and we had the settings. And now if we look at the new design, we've put all of those settings into one single place. And there's the new settings button, which is always in the bottom left corner of all of the steps. And this is where you'll find the settings. And if we click the settings button, we get 2 sets of settings, the words and phrases and the sentences and paragraphs. So all the settings are in one place and it's immediately obvious what they do. And if you're unsure about any of the settings, you can just click the more information link and you'll see this more information box slide in and you can read it, and then you can just go back and you can close the settings option. So what about the 2 buttons that are used to progress into the next step? Well, in the new design, there's just one button, Rewrite Article. And it's immediately obvious that this is the primary action and that this is how you move to step 2 of the process. And it still lets users do everything they wanted to do before, because the settings are a bit more clever now. So Now we've got the step 1. It's so much cleaner. It shows you what you need to see. It's got the settings in the bottom left corner, and it's got the primary action that moves you onto the next step of the process in the bottom right corner. So now let's move on to step 2. Okay, so we are now in step 2 of the old design. And this is where we got our processed article. And if you read the instructions, it says double click a word to see a list of suggested synonyms. So we can do that. We can click book and we double click it to select it, and we get the list of synonyms that are available. And we can pick the top synonyms for the word book. So novel, magazine, handbook, and so on. And this works great. But to be completely honest, when a user brings their mouse cursor over a word, there's no indication that they should double click the word to select it. So if they just single click it, nothing happens. And they have to read the actual instruction to know that they need to double click in order to see the synonyms. And let's go take a look at how we've done this in the new design. So this is step 2 of the new design. Now the first thing you'll notice is we've still got our progress bar at the top. So we know that the step 1 is finished. We know that we're now in step 2, and we know there's one step ahead of us, which is great. And if we wanted to go back to step 1, we just do this, and we know that step 1 is available, and we can go back to it. And if we want to go back to it, we get this little warning like, if you made any changes, make sure you don't lose them. So let's stay in step 2. Now let's go take a look at the article. Without reading any of the instructions, if we put the mouse cursor over a word, we see that it's actionable. There's something there, and we can, if we just click it, just with this regular single click, we get the list of synonyms, and we can once again pick the top synonyms. So it's immediately apparent that these words are actually actionable and they have a hidden feature, and it now just takes a single click instead of a double click to get to the list of synonyms. Now what's even cooler about that is we know a lot of the old users are going to be double clicking the words because they're used to that. So even if you double click a word, we do still show them the list of synonyms because it still works the way it used to. But then if they click anywhere else on the page, we close the synonym selection interface. So if we stay in the step 2 of the new design for a while longer, you'll see that once again we have the settings button in the bottom left corner, which is where the settings were in step 1. And if we open the settings, we see that we can now work with the settings for words and phrases, and that the readability setting applies to both one-click rewrite and to the top button. And if we're not sure what the top button is, we can just bring in the explanation. So that's pretty cool. And we've got some advanced settings as well. And we tell the user about the keyboard shortcuts, which weren't extremely apparent before. So we're now in step 2, and we can now run the one-click rewrite option that does everything for us. And once we've done that, we've got millions of possible versions of our starting article, and it's also immediately obvious how we move into the next step by clicking the finalize article that will take us to step 3. Now, if we go look at the step 2 of the old design, this is what it looked like. So there was no indication that these words are selectable, and if you clicked one, nothing happened. You had to double click a word. So then if you wanted to move on to the final step, step 3, this button made it somewhat obvious that that's how you did that, but it wasn't so obvious as it is right now. And also the settings were displayed in a different way and in a different place than they were in step 1, whereas now in the new step 2, the settings button is exactly where it was in step 1, so it's much more consistent. Okay, so I think it's time for us to move to step 3 of the process. Okay, so we are now in step 3 of the old design, and we've got our finalized article in spin text format right here. And we've got a couple of other options. We can switch the spin text format to something else. We can edit the article name, and this name is used to show our article inside our archive of all articles that we have. And we can change the category of the article. And then we've got some options, some settings, and then we can generate a unique version of this article or export hundreds of articles. So let's go take a look at what the step 3 in the new design looks like now. So this is step 3 of the new design. We've got our steps and we can return to any of the previous steps, and we now know that we're in the final step. And we get this nice success message telling us that our article has been finalized and saved to our archive, and we can now generate unique versions of our article below, which is always nice to know. So just like before, we have our article in Spintax format, but it was a little bit unreadable before. This is mostly meant to be used with other software products, so this is not something humans are usually reading. But even then, now we're showing the article in Spintax format in a much nicer way. But if a user wants to click on it and copy it somewhere else, as soon as you click on it, it turns into a regular input field and you can select the text and copy it and everything like that. And it also gives you the option to edit the article name or switch the Spintax format. And if you wanted to edit your finalized article, as soon as you start editing the article, you'll see the Save Changes button. But if you then return the article to its original state, the button goes away again because it's not needed. So this is how we show the finalized article in Spintax format in the old and the new design. And it's so much nicer in the new design. So now let's go take a look at some more things. We had some settings here before, and then we could generate a unique version of an article, and we got this. So this is our unique article, and if we click the button again, we get a different unique article. So in the new design, we've got the settings here in the bottom left, just like we had them in step 1 and step 2. So this is very consistent. And we can see the explanations, and we can go back and all of that good stuff. So the settings are exactly where we expected them to be. And all the buttons that have to do with the actual process of creating articles, like the exporting of hundreds of articles or generating a unique article, are right here, just as all actionable primary buttons were in the previous steps. So now we can generate a unique article from our Spintax article. And this is how we see the generated unique article that we just made. And if we click this button again, we get the little bouncy arrows and we get a new unique version of the article. So there's one more thing that we should talk about at this point. We're now showing you the uniqueness in the exact same place we showed you the uniqueness in step 2. And we're giving you the fixed grammar option in the exact same space that we gave you the fixed grammar option in step 1. So all of this is extremely consistent, and all of this just makes so much more sense. And we can still click this and go back to step 3 without any of the generated unique articles. Whereas in the old version, once we generated a unique version, we could never go back to the simpler design with just this input field showing. So this is how we made the process so much simpler. It's got 3 very obvious steps. Step 1, which is where you enter your article, and you've got all of your settings right here. Then you've got the step 2, where the words make it very obvious that they're easily clickable, and you can change all of the synonyms just like that. And you've got the settings in the same place and the uniqueness right here. And this is how you move to the next step of the process. And once you get to the next step, you've got your finalized article, you've got the settings in the same place, you can generate a unique article, and then you've got the uniqueness progress bar right here, just like you did in step 2, and the fixed grammar option right here, just like you did in step 1. So this is now much more consistent and much more satisfying to use.